So moving on to item 6.03, the reopening of school. And this is time for discussion and possible action. I will say before we get started, or as we get started talking about this, we've had a couple of meetings where we've had quite a excellent presentation by staff and cabinet, a lot of information. We've had quite a lot of discussion and questions, including from our meeting last night. Also had Chris from the Department of Health was able to join us and give us some background information from Mason County Department of Health perspective, so that was helpful as well. I think at this point, we're sort of down to two possible options that we are looking at. We had targeted January 25th as a possible day for restarting school for our pre-K1 group, and then sort of moving from there in staggered sections, different age groups every couple weeks. And then the other option that's been brought to us and suggested by the building principals was a date in February, I believe February 22nd. We also have received some information from the unions as terms of their comfort level and the desire to have the opportunity to possibly be vaccinated before returning to school. So with all that said, sort of a very brief summary of a lot of talk and discussion over the last week. Dr. Apostle, did you want to add anything at this point before we open it up for discussion and questions?
Well, the only thing I would add, Sally, and you're correct, we've had some great discussions. We've had a collaborative effort on the part of many people, giving us their opinion and ideas regarding the reopening of our schools. Of course, all of us want our students back in school, but there's a couple of factors that we're considering, and we considered them in our discussions, and that's the current rate of COVID-19, where here in Shelton, we're nearing 400 per 100,000. At least that was the last number. I think it was 399 or 398. And of course, the issue of vaccinations, that's come into play into our discussions. But there's no question we want to reopen our schools for our kids. We miss them. We know they need us. We need them. And we want to get our kids back in school, but we want to do it as safely as possible. So there's a general feeling that we need a little bit more time to go into February. As the board knows, that's been kind of the consensus from various parties. But you know, it's a very complex and difficult situation. But there's no question we want our kids back in school, and I will speak to that later in the meeting here.
All right, thank you, Dr. Apostle. Part of that possible February 22nd opening, in the meantime, we would be looking to bring in more small groups of students, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so hoping and working towards bringing more kids in, regardless of whether we're looking at the January 25th or February 22nd. So at this point, I'll open it up for discussion, questions any board members have. I know that after our meeting last night, we've had a chance to sleep on it and think a bit about it. So I know that there may be some more questions that have come up. Or maybe not.
I can jump in. And I said this last night, so I will start my comments off the same way. I really respect and value all of the hard work that everyone has put into these back to school reopening plans, because I know it is a lot of hard work. And I, as a school board member, definitely respect the principals coming together and putting together a letter to the school board with their concerns. They are the ones in their buildings. They've got the strongest pulse on what's going on and the needs that they may have. And it sounds like there are still some things that need to get wrapped up. I also, know that because we're getting different information all the time, it does look like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Apostle, but it looked like the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Reichdahl, has written a letter to the governor regarding vaccinations as well. So at this point in time, I think going with what the principals have suggested of February 22nd will give more time to see where this vaccination discussion can develop, even on a statewide level. And we can also see where some of these budgetary issues may fall, as well as having our local schools be able to shore up what their plans are, as well. And then a bright spot for that for me is that they also do have these plans to have more small groups of students that have particular needs coming back into the buildings, and we can do that safely. um, then that's where I'm looking at things at this point, instead of doing the January 25th start date.
Thank you, Carrie. May I respond, Sally?
Yes, please.
When you mentioned the letters and the communication going to the governor, that's coming from all directions across the state. What we're saying is that we all want our kids in school. There's no doubt about it. We want them in our schools now, today, but we want to make sure that they're safe and that our staff is safe. So there has to be a correlation between wanting our kids in school and making sure our kids are safe in school and that our staff is going to be safe. People are getting vaccines. There needs to be a correlation between asking our teachers to go into the schools and having them safely go into the schools by being vaccinated. We want to give our teachers, our staff, the opportunity to get vaccinated so that they can go to school and feel confident that they're going to stay healthy. And that, of course, impacts all of our students at the same time. So things are moving forward, and I'm hoping that the vaccine becomes more readily available for all of us and specifically for our staff, so that we can truly open up our schools as soon as possible. And I have confidence that that's going to happen.
I guess I would add to that, that I really appreciate the comments from the parents and the community, as well as the staff at the schools. And I mean, we have 4,200 kids in our district, and I don't remember the number of staff, but that's a lot of people in our community. And I don't want to see us lose anybody. And right now in our county, we have a higher rate of infection that we've seen. Today it's 399 per 100,000. That's double the rate that they will even consider a high school student going back. And it's just dangerous. I know we talk about the hope and we see the vaccine coming and whatever. Right now, I just think it's too dangerous, and I don't want to see us at this point go into a situation like that. So I would like us to wait. A month could mean a lot of different things. It could be a lot brighter at the end of that month. I would like us to continue as a district to look at creative ways to engage the students. We have a program that's going, but I don't know it's necessarily reaching every student as well as it could. And so just keeping the communication going with students and parents and looking for more creativity. But at this time, I really think we need to wait.
Thank you.
And I could go along with that. My only concern is that February 22nd isn't going to buy us enough time. Even if the vaccination schedule is sped up, I don't think we're going to be ready to go by February 22nd. I mean, we get, even at best case scenario, we'll have maybe custodians ready to enter the building, and then they're going to want to clean, and then teachers are going to want to come in. I don't see us really being able to move forward till into March.
Sally, can I respond?
Yes, please.
You know, Sandy, I think you could be correct, but we've got to try. We've got to have a real positive outlook and do the very best we can from this point on to get as many students in our schools as possible, but at the same time, hope for the vaccine to come through for our families and for our staff. I'm just hoping that that takes place. But when we get to, for example, if the board approves the date of February 22nd this evening, along the way between now and then, we're going to have to monitor things very closely, and we'll know if we can open or not. If things get worse, then we're in a different ballgame altogether. If things are better, which we all hope it will be, then we will take appropriate action. But what you've mentioned, could that happen? Yes, it could happen. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping things get much better, but you just don't know what this virus is going to do from day to day. I was listening, just very quickly, I was listening to the news this evening, and a professor of medicine from the University of Washington who appears on Channel 5 quite frequently, he said that, he can't understand why we want to send our kids to school and send our teachers to school without a vaccine. And he's on the news on Channel 5, he's world renowned. He said, I just think it's pretty simple. If we don't have the vaccine, why would we send our teachers back to school? And he said the same for our students and our families. So people are very, very concerned about the health of everyone. And we've got to work together to monitor things. But there's no question, we want our students back in school. They're being hurt by not being back in school. And our teachers want to be in school to teach our kids. It's just things are so complex, and this virus kills people. Let's face it, it does. And so we've got to just be aware of that as we move forward. But I can tell you right now, the Shelton School District is going to move forward, but we will monitor things very closely. We will communicate with, of course, with the board and with the community, and we need to move together forward for the sake of our children and for the sake of our staff and community. And we will do that. And we've been doing that since March.
Ellie, I just have a few questions. I think, I made my position and thoughts clear last night, but so I won't go into all the reasons that I support postponing the reopening, but I do have a few questions. One is, when we do reopen, let's say we reopen in February, is that going to cause are we going to have the same plan that's going to still displace our highest need students? Because I don't know that I'll be able to support that plan in February. The second part of that, and we heard from some concerned parents tonight about the English learners. And I guess I'm wondering, if we stay online, are we saying that they're not going to have their Spanish program? Or I know that part of that had to do with not having resources if we did the hybrid. So I'm hoping that this postponing this is going to still provide the English learners with their Spanish program.
Okay.
And then the third question that I have is tied to the vaccination. Alex, you've mentioned a few times, and I know some of the teachers and unions that we've heard from are focusing on the vaccination, but as we heard from the health department, we're looking at probably April before we even see the majority of our teachers being able to get their first vaccination. So I guess I'm just trying to, worry about these things that are a little bit out in front of us, but I do fully support postponing the opening.
May I ask Lynn a question? Lynn, your first comment about the in-person instruction, are you saying that you would like to see that expanded beyond just those students that have special circumstances and special needs? Are you saying
no, I want to continue, serving those students with those highest needs. I know that we put a pause on allowing any
Right.
additional students, but I want to lift that. I would like to see us serve any student who meets that criteria of special needs, whether it's homelessness or disability or connectivity or language issues. I want to make sure that if they are not able to access their education, that we provide a way for them to do that in these small cohorts. So
I totally agree with you. And
but my concern, Alex, what the question was really focused on, that was part of the plan and that was part of the presentation when we received it, was if we reopen in January, that we would have, these kids would no longer be, they may not be able to come in, that we wouldn't have the resources or space, and some of them would have to be turned away. And my biggest concern with that plan is I don't want to see that in any circumstance. And so if we open in February, I don't want to see that. So I don't know whether there's something is different in February with that or.
Well, I can tell you this, I'm in total agreement with you. We will never turn away students that have special circumstances. That's not who we are, and we can't do that. We've got to figure it out and help our kids under any and all circumstances. Now, the one point that you made about the vaccines, I think the pressure that's being put on the governor, it makes so much sense in terms of vaccinating our staff so they can come back to work. They've got to be moved up. It just doesn't make sense not to do that. So I have high hopes that the governor and the state superintendent will make a decision along with the legislature, if that needs to happen, that we're going to vaccinate our teachers, give them the opportunity to be vaccinated so they can come back to school and deal with students that we're talking about and beyond that. So we're on the same page. Absolutely, Lynn. No question.
I think the challenge remains with this too, that it's a ever evolving situation, whether that's case rates in our community, whether it is, I mean, there could be multiple changes that could happen with vaccinations, whether they combine both of those sets of teacher, and staff groups into one and move it up, whether there's more vaccinations that come out, whether we do see mutations. I think I think the best thing that we can do right now is take a recommendation that we have and set another marker. But of course, like we've been doing all along, it's a fluid situation. And as we get information, I mean, we've all been doing this since this began. And I mean, there's so many times where it's like, we wouldn't have ever guessed that we'd be here right now with some of these decisions that we're having to make. We all would have hoped that. I couldn't believe when schools had to shut down in March. I thought, how can we do this for 2 weeks before spring break? There's no way, and here we are so much longer. But I think that the best thing we can do is set another marker at the recommendation of our principals. We can be continuously meeting and assessing the data, because all of these things will change depending on where we sit. I hope to see an extreme reduction in case rates in our community. That would be a wonderful thing. I think that would make people a lot more comfortable in general. And then we can see what happens with these conversations and with what does end up happening with vaccinations.
Thank you.
I wanted to add that in there.
I think it's an excellent point. And that's sort of the goal, I think, we are only moving it out a month, but that buys everyone a little bit more time. It buys some more planning. It buys a chance to look at some of these things that we've discussed. Like Lynn brought up, I've had concerns in terms of our English language learners and some of our students who are facing some extra challenges, especially in their learning. And also the other thing it does is there are school districts around the state that are making some choices to just be online the rest of the year. And we're making a choice to say, hey, we still have hope that maybe we can come back. And so we just are going to move. The idea is if by going to another month out, we're just moving the flag back a month and then reassess as we go along. So I think that's where I'm also sitting in terms of this. I'm not willing to give up yet on the hope that we'll be able to have our students back in school at least for a little bit this year. So at this point, if anyone has any further questions or comments, if not, we can move on to action on this. If someone would be willing to make a motion.
I move that we postpone the reopening of schools to February 22nd.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to postpone the reopening of schools to February 22nd. Is there any further discussion?
I would maybe add the word possible.
Possible reopening of schools
Possible.
February 22nd. Yes, that is a good point. It's sort of an assumed, but we'll be really clear about it. Possible reopening of schools on February 22nd. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. Thank you, principals and cabinet and Dr. Apostle. And I know a lot of time and energy and probably a lot of angst went into looking at all of this data and coming up with this plan. So thank you for all of that work. It's greatly appreciated.